Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from this book about Ukraine. Now, if you're not new to my channel, first of all, if you are new to my channel, welcome. If you've been here before, you know that books from this series were written in like 2004, I want to say, like way too long ago. And a lot has happened in Ukraine since then, so a lot of the history facts and stuff in these books aren't accurate anymore. So we are going to read the culture section, a closer look at Ukraine, which there's still some outdated things in here. They don't spell Kiev the proper way, and there's a whole part about Crimea. So just note that. And I mean, like 95% of this is still accurate. So let's read it to relax. Tonight we're going to read Chernobyl's Nuclear Catastrophe, Dances of the Soul, Gymnastic Success Story, Ivana Kupala, Nature's Festival, Kiev, Cradle of Ukrainian Civilization, Kossacks, Warrior Race, Mykola Lyshenko, musical founder, The Politics of Youth, Pottery from the Past, Taras Shevchenko, literary legend, Sorchitsny's Fairground Attractions, the Ukrainian Riviera, Farniki, the national dish, village life, and weddings Ukrainian style. So let's just dive right in. Starting with one of my favorite topics in history. I don't know why, but I have a weird fascination with obscure disasters. Chernobyl's up near the top, and like number 2 under the Titanic. But anyway, Chernobyl's nuclear catastrophe. The name Chernobyl will forever be associated with the worst nuclear disaster in the history of humankind. At approximately 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986, Reactor Unit 4 at the Chernobyl, also known as Chernobyl, the proper spelling, nuclear power plant near Kiev exploded. The blast occurred during a safety procedure experiment, and it released a massive amount of radioactive material into the air. The material was carried by the wind and spread over Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, and as far west as France and Italy. Fatal exposure. 2 power plant workers were killed in the Chernobyl reactor explosion. More explosions started a fire and blew off the lid of the reactor. The firefighters who put out the fire paid for their success with their lives. More than 30 firefighters died afterward from radiation exposure. In addition, the 30,000 inhabitants of the town of Pripyat, where many of the power plant workers lived, were evacuated. All the residents had to leave their homes, their belongings, and their whole lives behind. Lasting effects. The Chernobyl disaster affected Ukraine in a number of ways. At the time, the exposure to radiation was expected to affect the health of tens of thousands of people through illnesses such as cancer. Other effects included a decrease in birth rates, a shortage of labor around Kiev from the migration of people to other areas of the country, and a slowdown of agricultural and industrial production due to radiation contamination. In December 2000, the Ukrainian government, under pressure from the European Union and other international organizations, shut down the last working reactor at Chernobyl. The problem of Chernobyl, however, is not solved with the closure of the plant. The damaged reactor was housed in a concrete sarcophagus designed to stop radiation leaks, but the structure has weakened and urgent repairs are required to contain its dangerous contents. I know the sarcophagus is only supposed to be good for about 20 to 30 years, and it was built almost 20 years ago, so Anyway, on to a happier topic. Dances of the Soul. The music is slow and quiet at first, and the dancers' motions are smooth. The performers seem to be just walking around the stage to the rhythm of the music, not dancing. Seconds later, the melody speeds up a little and becomes louder. The dancers respond with faster motions and more energetic gestures. The music then becomes even faster and louder. The dancers accelerate, as if competing with the sounds. A minute into the dance, the song is so loud and furiously fast. The dancers, men in the foreground and women in the back, have no trouble keeping pace. The men, often dressed in white, red, and black embroidered shirts, bright red loose pants called charivari, and red or black boots, move toward the front of the stage and perform leaps and turns worthy of Olympic athletes. The women stay in the background at first, as if providing a backdrop to the men's furious motions, but then they also move forward and join the men in this fast dance. The dance is Hopak, one of the best known and most unique of the Ukrainian folk dances. Legends expressed in dance. Ukrainian folk dances use songs and ballads to portray the country's history and legends. Through the dances, Ukrainians express their hopes, customs, and traditions. Some of the dances are fast and athletic, such as the Hopak. Others are slow and solemn. Some popular themes include love and family, the change of seasons, harvests, and other farming activities. Dancers, through their movements and gestures, also portray events that occur in everyday life. Through skillful moves, a people's way of life or a trade or occupation can be displayed through dance. Based on traditional folk culture, Ukrainian dances vary by region in choreographic method, content, dynamics, costumes, and musical accompaniment. Ukrainian dancing has roots in ancient times when the dances were considered a ritual of communicating with the forces of nature. Folk dancing is one of Ukraine's more visible exports to other countries. Many Ukrainian immigrants and descendants form their own dance groups and schools in their new countries. And Ukrainian professional dancing companies travel the world performing to audiences. Next we have gymnastic success story. The 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia showed once again that Ukraine is a world gymnastics power. The Ukrainian men's team won the silver medal in the artistic team competition, and Alexander Beresh took the bronze in the men's individual all-around event. The Ukrainian women's team placed high in the artistic and trampoline events. The performance at Sydney was neither the first nor the most successful showing for Ukrainian gymnasts. In addition to Olympic medals, Ukrainian gymnasts have won several prizes at top world and European competitions. After winning a gold medal at the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games, Lilia Podkopayeva held the Olympic, world, and European all-around titles at the same time. As part of the Soviet Union, Ukraine benefited from the expertise of the Soviets in the field of gymnastics, and today Ukrainian gymnasts continue to use the knowledge and experience of famous Soviet coaches and athletes. Ukraine's gymnastics program is supported mainly by the government, so recent economic problems and a lack of money make it difficult for Ukraine to build new facilities. Nevertheless, the gymnasts still manage to achieve international success due to their commitment to the sport and determination to succeed. In recent decades, the sport of gymnastics has become the domain of the very young, especially in women's competition. 17, 16, and even 15-year-old athletes compete in the world's premier competitions. Unfortunately, the career of a professional gymnast is also short. Lilia Podkopayeva retired when she was only 20. The most famous gymnastics training facility in Ukraine is the National Training Center in the town of Konchazaspa near Kiev. Built more than 25 years ago as a local training facility, the base is the center of the Ukrainian gymnastics program. The Ukrainian men's and women's teams train here. Both teams have nicknames. The women's team is the Ultrayuks, and the men's is known as the Trezub Titans. Let's see, this is Olena Vitrushenko. Very cool. Love artistic gymnastics. It's so fun to watch. Ivana Kupala, Nature's Festival. At least that's how I hope you say it. On July 7th, when the Ukrainian summer is normally warm and free of bad weather, many people across the country take part in the celebration of the Night of Ivana Kupala. This festival, celebrated widely in the rural areas of western Ukraine, dates back to pre-Christian times when people worshipped many different gods and believed nature had a special magical power that was capable of changing their lives for the better. It's really pretty. Choose your flowers. There you go. During the night of Ivana Kupala, many plants and herbs are believed to acquire healing powers. According to old myths about the festival, the night of July 7th also is the only time of the year when ferns blossom, and whoever finds fern flowers in the forest in the middle of this night will be happy, lucky, and wealthy. Anyone wanting to find the blossoms must know that only 9-year-old ferns can bloom. Those gathering the flowers spread a silk kerchief under the fern's fronds for the blossom to fall onto. Marriage predictions. During the night of Ivana Kupala, young unmarried women sing special songs about love and marriage. At dawn, they go to a riverbank and set fresh flowers afloat in the river. If the river takes a woman's flowers downstream, the women will soon be happily married. If the river returns the flowers, the woman has to wait at least another year for a groom. People also perform other rituals to ensure the fertility of the fields and a good harvest in autumn. With the coming of Christianity to Ukraine, churches tried to suppress the holiday, which they considered a pagan celebration. Unable to stop people from celebrating this festival, Christian leaders combined Ivana Kupala with the Christian feast day of John the Baptist. And next we have Kiev, cradle of Ukrainian civilization. Ukraine's capital city of Kiev preserves much of its historic heritage while reinventing and revitalizing itself according to changing times. Early settlements in the area date back tens of thousands of years, but today's Kiev was probably founded more than 1,500 years ago. Legendary origins. A popular Ukrainian legend about Kiev's origins tells the story of 3 brothers who each established a settlement in the area. These settlements became the town of Kiev, named after the eldest brother Key. This account is very popular among Ukrainians. When the city celebrated its 1,500-year anniversary in the 1980s, statues of the 3 brothers and their sister, Libid, were erected on one of the embankments along the Dnieper River. The city grew in prominence between the 9th and 13th centuries as the center of the ancient civilization of the Kievan Rus kingdom, with its magnificent churches and other impressive buildings. Medieval Kiev was known throughout Europe for its beauty and vitality and for its architectural, artistic, musical, language, and literary contributions. Historical highlights. Since Ukrainian independence, Kiev has received massive financial investment from the West, allowing the city to create new jobs, build new facilities, and improve its standard of living. Despite the renovations, downtown Kiev is still soaked in history and tradition. The main chestnut tree-lined Kossacks Avenue leads to Vladimir Hill, named after the ruler of the Ukrainian state of Kievan Rus, Saint Vladimir. Farther up the hill is a street named Andrievsky Uzvis, or Andrew's Descent. This twisting road winds its way through lush hills looking over the Dnieper River. On the street is the small Andrievska Church, which was designed in 1754 by the Russian Imperial Court's Italian-born architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli. Two other famous historic landmarks in Kiev are the St. Sophia Cathedral and the Kievo-Peshcherka Lavra, or Monastery of the Caves. St. Sophia's distinct domes can be seen from anywhere in central Kiev. You can see over here in this picture. And the monastery is famous for its underground passages and its collection of religious exhibits. Next is the Cossacks, warrior race. The Ukrainian Cossacks, or Cossacks, I have always known it as, are best known as fierce warriors. Their main camps were close to the modern city of Zaporizhia, along the banks of the Dnieper River, halfway between Kiev and the southern steppe. The Cossacks are usually remembered as strong men with shaved heads and long mustaches. The trademark of the Cossacks' intimidating appearance is a long and narrow clump of hair that hangs down and to the side from an otherwise hairless scalp. Let's see if this guy, can you see? Kind of, you can see the bit of hair there. It's a big mustache. This clump of hair is called ocelodets. Cossacks also often fought without shirts, which gave them an even more intimidating and savage appearance. Military mercenaries. After the 15th century, the word Cossack described peasants who fled serfdom in Poland, Lithuania, and the Moscow-centered Principality of Muscovy to start self-governing military communities in the Dnieper region. These Cossacks evolved into a military force, sometimes fighting for freedom, and sometimes for money as mercenaries. They were allies to many people and states. Look at this guy. Including the Ukrainian princes under Polish occupation and the Russian Empire. As Cossack armies grew larger, they built fortresses along the Dnieper. A Cossack fortress is called a siege. The word siege in Ukrainian roughly means a fortress built from trees. Everything in a siege, including the tall fence around it, was built from logs. Legends of the Cossacks. The Cossacks' bravery is commemorated in Ukrainian folklore. The traveling minstrels, the Kobzari, sang songs about a brave Cossack showing up at a critical moment to save a poor peasant or a beautiful woman from Turkish oppression. One famous image of Cossacks appears in Ilya Repin's painting Zaporozhian Cossacks, about the Cossacks' conflict against the Turks. Next we have Mykola Lysenko, musical founder. Considered by many to be the founder of Ukrainian classical music, composer Mykola Vitalyevich Lysenko is the author of 11 operas, 8 of which are based on Ukrainian stories and themes, and numerous choral and piano pieces, as well as works for Ukraine's national instrument, the bandura. His other achievements include putting to music more than 100 poems by the great Ukrainian poet Taras Shevchenko, who we're going to read about later. Shevchenko is also credited with encouraging Ukrainian music education by founding a musical institute in Kiev in 1904. There he is. Lyshenko is best known for his operas. His important operas, which brought him recognition both at home and abroad, include the comedy Natalka Poltavka and the historic work Taras Bulba, based on the novella by Nikolai Gogol. Taras Bulba, a large-scale work, could not be produced in Ukraine because of a lack of resources to stage it. The opera did not see its premiere until 1924, 12 years after the composer died. Toils of a lifetime. Throughout his life and career, Lyshenko felt that promoting Ukrainian national music and culture was his major mission. When creating his music, he tried to use Ukrainian themes, characters, and musical heritage. He saw music not only as a beautiful and fulfilling form of art, but also as a way to awaken people's national and cultural conscience by putting them in touch with their culture and history. Lyshenko was born in a small village in the region around Poltava. His mother taught him to play the piano when he was a child. In 1860, he studied music at Kharkov, and in 1864, he finished his university studies in Kiev. From 1867 to 1869, he continued his piano studies in Leipzig, Germany, and returned to Kiev to teach piano in 1869. Lyshenko worked hard to promote Ukrainian music on his return to Kiev. He gave piano concerts, organized choirs, and toured throughout the country. As a music ethnographer, he traveled throughout the countryside, collecting and recording songs and melodies. In the 1990s, Ukraine recognized Lyshenko's contribution to the nation's culture by issuing several postage stamps commemorating the composer. The politics of youth. Young Ukrainians have forced the government to change its policies twice in recent years, and even more so in even more recent years, by organizing mass demonstrations in which students, young workers, and young intellectuals took to the streets to protest. When economic reform started in Ukraine in the early 1990s, they hit young people hard. Education, previously free, suddenly became expensive. The unemployment rate among young people also jumped to about 30% by 1998 after plants and factories cut jobs to become more efficient. Harsh economic realities prompted many young Ukrainians to become politically active. Youthful pressure. In October 1990, Kiev students began a campaign of peaceful protests to speed up political reforms designed to increase Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union. They used a variety of non-violent tactics, including a hunger strike in the city's main square, school boycotts, protests, and occupation of government buildings. There's a peaceful protest up there. The students gradually escalated the conflict, forcing the government to respond either with massive repression or major concessions. 15 days after the protests started, the government gave in to the students' demands, and Ukraine's parliament was forced to adopt new laws. The students had won the battle. Continuing protests. In the summer of 2000, Ukrainian students rose again to protest against the government's economic policies. This time, the demonstrations were less intense than in 1990, and they consisted of several peaceful marches on parliament and government buildings. The demonstrators demanded the resignation of President Leonid Kuchma, who they believed was not doing enough to improve the nation's economy. Kuchma kept his job, but Parliament again passed new laws to satisfy some of the protesters' demands. One of the organizers of this protest and the protest in 1990 was the Union of Ukrainian Students, one of the most powerful youth organizations in the country. Next we have pottery from the past. Two internationally known styles of ceramics have their origins in Ukraine, Opyshnaya and Hutsal. The two styles are artistically different and come from different parts of the country. Opyshnaya pottery comes from central Ukraine, while Hutsal ceramics hail from the Carpathian Mountains in the western part of the country. Center of ceramics. Look at this. Wow, that's talented. About 30 miles or 48 kilometers from Poltava is the small village of Opyshnaya. The village is Ukraine's oldest and most famous ceramics center. Opyshnaya ceramics are often strange and intriguing. Whoa, you got that right. Oh, I like this one. Along with the usual round, square, and oval pots and bowls that can be used in the kitchen, Opyshnaya ceramic artists use their nation's heritage of folk tales, legends, and mysterious characters to create one of the world's more unusual collections of ceramic figures. One of the favored themes in Opyshnaya pottery is animals. Elaborate horses, bulls, and sheep are the village artists' trademark. Among the most popular Opyshnaya artifacts are horse and bull-shaped water jugs, sheep-shaped storage containers for rice and flour, and pig-shaped pots for candy. Opyshnaya has a large museum that houses an impressive collection of pottery. Its pots are also sold at fairs and festivals. Product of the Highlands. Hutsal ceramics are named after the Hutsal people, the Highlanders of the Carpathian Mountains in western Ukraine. The Hutsals have a reputation as skilled craftspeople, known for their wood carving, brasswork, and rug weaving, as well as their famous pottery. While Opyshnaya ceramics often portray legendary creatures, the Hutsal pottery is more down to earth and usually pictures geometric designs, scenes from everyday life, and some religious themes. Hutsal pottery is characterized by clear-cut, geometric designs. The color scheme of Hutsal ceramics usually includes green, yellow, red, and black. And next, we have Taras Shevchenko, literary legend. Ukraine's greatest and best-known literary figure is poet and painter Taras Shevchenko. As a son of poor farmers, the young Shevchenko was virtually the slave of a wealthy family. Artists who knew the family, however, noticed his talent and helped buy Shevchenko's freedom. He was then able to study at the St. Petersburg Academy of the Arts with the Russian painter Karl Brulov. After completing his studies at the Russian Academy, Shevchenko continued to paint, but it was his poetry that brought him international fame. Early works. Shevchenko's most famous early work is the collection of poetry Kobzar, or the Minstrel. Most poems in this romantic collection remember Ukraine's heroic and epic past and describe the Kossacks and their wars with foreign invaders. Later, the topics and tone of Shevchenko's poetry changed. To his usual romanticism, he added open opposition to the Russian imperial authorities. His poems became militant, calling for disobedience and foretelling a revolution. The epic poem Haidamaki, or the Haidamaks, I hope, combined Ukrainian romanticism and legends which calls to end Russian political and cultural oppression. The poem is an allegory or symbolic representation of Ukraine's struggle for freedom. The Russians, wanting to stop Shevchenko from writing, sentenced him to exile and compulsory military service in 1847. Ukrainian exile. Banned from writing or painting while in the army, the poet kept a secret diary where he wrote drafts of new poems and sketched new pictures. This diary became famous after his death. An edition of it, with reproductions of all the poet's handwriting and drawings, was made more than a century after he died. To Ukrainians all over the world, the name of Taras Shevchenko is a spiritual and intellectual symbol of Ukraine. His poems and biographies have been translated into dozens of languages and are widely available and recognized in the West. Next we have Sorochitsny's Fairground Attractions. Sorochitsny, a small town about 60 miles or 96 kilometers from Poltava, comes alive during the last weekend of August, as colorful and interesting characters from Ukraine's past invade its sleepy streets and markets. The Sorochitsny Fair is one of the oldest and most exciting events in Ukraine's cultural and commercial life. The event attracts tens of thousands of visitors from all over the country, Europe, and abroad. Something for everyone. The fair is held over 3 days on a large square outside the town. Merchants flock to Sorochitsny, hoping to sell their goods at a profitable price, while tourists come looking for a bargain. The fair has it all: food, drinks, clothes, housewares, and even cattle and pets. Besides being a trading place, the fair is also a large outdoor theater, in the spirit of old-time summer fairs that combined trade with entertainment. Fair organizers erect stages all over the fairgrounds. Look at these sweet cows. Actors wearing Ukrainian folk costumes or dressed up as various strange and mysterious creatures act out comedies, legends, and fairy tales on stage and among the crowd. Literary tribute. Much of the theatrical action at the fair centers on the literary heritage of the 19th century writer Nikolai Gogol, who was born near Sorochitsny. Gogol's writing is full of mythical characters such as mermaids, forest creatures, and talking animals. His stories are also tributes to the resourceful and humorous Ukrainian villager. Excerpts from these stories are among the most popular dramas staged at Sorochitsny. The performances at Sorochitsny try to capture both the supernatural and the everyday aspects of Gogol's work. A highlight of the fair is an actor impersonating the author, who quietly walks around as if watching performances of his own works and evaluating them. Photographs taken with the Gogol impersonator are always popular with visitors to the fair. And next we have the Ukrainian Riviera, which, remember, this book came out before Russia annexed Crimea, so just remember that. Anyway, I'm going to read this anyway because it's still interesting. Ukraine's premier resort area, the Crimean Peninsula, is a popular summer vacation destination for many people in Ukraine, Russia, and other neighboring countries. Located on the Black Sea in southern Ukraine, Crimea has all the necessary ingredients for a vacation: deep blue sea, sunny beaches, hiking, and plenty of historic and cultural monuments. The Crimean Mountains cross the peninsula in the south, making the region popular among rock climbers. City by the sea. One of the most interesting places in Crimea is Yalta, a city located on the southern coast of the peninsula. As it approaches the sea, the main road to Yalta from inland first winds among the yellow and brown Crimean mountains, offering views of grapes growing in the mountain sides. Then the road takes a sharp turn, and Yalta is nestled in the valley below, between the mountains and the sea. The city buildings are predominantly white and light gray, and are separated by green patches of parks and tree-lined streets. Shielded from the rest of the peninsula by the mountains, Yalta enjoys a special climate of its own. The weather may be cloudy and rainy a short distance away beyond the mountains, while it is sunny and hot in the city. The Mediterranean-type climate makes the city and its surroundings an excellent place for holidays and agriculture. The place to be for Yalta nightlife is the embankment, where hotels, restaurants, bars, and clubs face out toward the sea. Hold on, my cat's snoring. Hey, kitty. Hey, baby. Don't snore, okay? Thank you. He's sleeping right next to me, sorry. Historic homes. Probably the most famous person who lived in Yalta was the renowned Russian writer Anton Chekhov. Chekhov and his family moved to Yalta in 1899 because the Crimean climate was good for the writer's ailing health. Chekhov lived in Yalta on and off until his death. Chekhov's house is now home to a museum that honors his life and work. A short boat ride from Yalta is Levadia, the marble summer residence of the last Russian Tsar Nicholas II. Here it is, summer house for the Tsar and his family. In 1945, the palace hosted the famous Yalta Conference, during which the governments of the United States, Soviet Union, and Great Britain agreed on the future of post-World War II Europe. The palace is now a museum. And next we have Farniki, the national dish, which again, I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. If I'm wrong, let me know. While Italy is often associated with pasta, France with wine and cheese, and America with hamburgers, Ukraine is linked to Farniki. Over time, Farniki have become more than food to Ukrainians. They are the subject of folk tales, songs, and poems. Farniki are so well known and made so often that some Ukrainian cookbooks use the phrase, "make the dough as for Farniki," in recipes. No further explanation is needed. Simple but satisfying. Farniki are dough dumplings with a filling. The type of filling is open to the imagination. Anything can be used for fillings, ranging from meat and fish to vegetables such as cabbage or potatoes, and even strawberries and cherries. More creative cooks are known to put plums and apricots inside Farniki. These dumplings can be either savory or sweet, and served as a main dish, an appetizer, or a dessert. Farniki's origins are linked to the days when Ukrainian cuisine consisted of only a few kinds of meat, vegetables, and fruit. With this small number of ingredients, Farniki took center stage, since they can have a wide variety of fillings. They may have started as a festive dish, but they are now a popular everyday food. Farniki promote culinary individuality. Some cooks prefer thick, heavy Farniki, while others like light and delicate ones. A potato and cheese filling is one of the plumpest. It sounds good. And the dough is made thicker for this filling than for sauerkraut or cabbage fillings. Fruit-filled Farniki are made with lighter dough. The recipe omits eggs, making the dough somewhat similar to that used for pizza. Tough and simple. More than just food. Making Farniki is fun and often involves the whole family. Children help make the dough, cut out circles, and add fillings. Farniki are part of Ukrainian folklore and even literature. Songs, poems, and jokes have been written about them. One of Nikolai Gogol's humorous stories about life in a Ukrainian village highlights the popularity of this dish among Ukrainians. In the story, a character wastes his magic powers eating Farniki hands-free by commanding them to jump from his plate, take a dip in a bowl of sour cream, and jump into his mouth. And next we have these sweet people here. Village life. The Ukrainian village is not simply a place on a map or a collection of streets, houses, and people's addresses. It is a place of ethnic, cultural, and spiritual heritage. Life is slow, simple, and somewhat old-fashioned. Many Ukrainian villages look and feel as if they are frozen in time, not because they lack the facilities of the big cities, but because they treasure and preserve the old values, habits, and Ukrainian way of life. Community spirit. Friendship and camaraderie exist among villagers. Together they harvest crops, celebrate births, and mourn deaths. Most villagers know one another and greet one another in the streets. Even when they meet strangers, villagers greet them, strike up a conversation, and make them feel welcome. Look how charming. Every family in a Ukrainian village tries to be economically self-sufficient. Around every house, sizable plots of land are farmed for fruits and vegetables. The plot where vegetables are grown is called ogorod. Ogorod, I don't know. And the fruit section is called sad. The average Ukrainian village family works hard on its plot of land. When the fruits and vegetables are harvested, most are for the family, while the surplus is often sold at the local market. Surviving tough times. When Ukraine embarked on radical economic reforms in the early 1990s, many young people moved to large cities to get a college education or a better paying job. Consequently, some villages began to be described as dying because they were populated mostly by the elderly. Some rural areas, however, started experiencing population growth after Ukraine's independence. As the rapid change to a free market economy forced many city dwellers into poverty, a number of these people moved to villages to try and make a living off the land. And I think, this is the last one. Awesome. Weddings, Ukrainian style. The traditional Ukrainian wedding is a complex affair with many rituals. Traditional ceremonies are more common in the countryside. People getting married in the city usually prefer a simpler modern ceremony. Elaborate traditions. The traditional village wedding usually starts with a formal engagement. The groom and several respected elders, usually older married men called starotsi, visit the home of the bride to make a marriage request to her parents and exchange gifts. The groom's party brings a bottle of Ukrainian vodka called horilka, and the bride drapes the elders with a ritual embroidered towel called rushnik. Both parties provide a traditional loaf of bread for one another. The traditional Ukrainian engagement can be as short as 1 week, the time needed to cook and prepare for the wedding celebration. The ritual part of the marriage process begins on the Thursday or Friday before the actual wedding with the baking of a special elaborate bread called korovai. Let the party begin. On Friday night and Saturday morning, the bride and groom walk around the village inviting their respective wedding guests. Friday evening is usually reserved for Devich Večer, a party where the bride bids farewell to her unmarried female friends. On Saturday, a civil marriage contract is signed. The church ceremony, if there is one, takes place on Sunday. During the ceremony, the couple must stand on the rushnik, which symbolizes their unity. After the ceremony, the towel is given to the groom's mother, who ties the hands of the groom and the bride with it, symbolizing that they are now inseparable, tying the knot. The ceremonies are usually followed by meals served at the bride's house first and then at the groom's. Wedding celebrations can last for as long as a week, with the whole village involved. What a nice note to end the book on. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good night.